Hey there, my name is Alex. I am the Silvermont. There's almost 400 weapons in Elden Ring, and of course, some people will wonder, which is the best? Can there be a best weapon? Considering the many playstyles, different bosses that require different approaches, and so on, maybe there isn't a single best weapon. But there is one weapon in the Shadow of the Erdtree which gives me the vibe of being the best. The Fire Knight's Greatsword. This weapon isn't light. It weighs 16 units. It needs a moderate amount of stats, 22 strength, 18 dexterity, and 12 faith. And it isn't easy to get. You can't get it during the base game at all, only in the DLC. And even then, it has a very low drop rate. But this could be, I'm thinking, one of the best weapons in Elden Ring, or at least one of the most overpowered. What do I mean by overpowered? Well, actually, not really overpowered, just really damn good in almost every situation you can imagine. For one thing, the FKGS, not to be mistaken for the FUGS, the Fug's Fume Ultra Greatsword from Dark Souls 2, but for one thing, it's a great moveset. You have thrusts, slams, slashes, and a fairly quick prod. The long reach is good for PvE and, well, probably for PvP. I don't do much with that these days, but even if you can't dead angle people like in Dark Souls 1, the high damage and reach aren't to be underestimated. The weapon has incredible attack rating if you take it down the Flame Art Infusion route. Others are available, of course, so if you want to go with the trusty Lion's Claw or Giant Hunt for like a strength or whatever build, you can, for sheer clobbering ability. But Flame of the Redmanes for packs or Flame Spear are perhaps my favourite options. As you may be aware, Flame of the Redmanes has always been one of my favourites, even if they, nerfed it years ago. It's still good, just not as crazy as it used to be. Flame Spear, though, gives you a decent projectile attack, which does very high stance damage on the Fire Knight Greatsword if you strike with the weapon. It might not juggle or knock down like the Giant Hunt or Lion's Claw, but it does give you a fire buff on your weapon for half a minute, maybe a bit more, which adds some extra attack rating on top of it. Even on this character of mine I'm demonstrating it here, who has quite low strength as the FKGS isn't the primary weapon I use on them, the attack rating is still considerable, thanks to the high faith, making this weapon ideal for strength faith builds, which are popular due to, well, their incredible strength and versatility. If there are any weaknesses to the weapon, they can be made up for with other incantations as well. And what are those weaknesses? Well, as a colossal weapon, it is slow and heavy, although at time of writing, they actually patched Elden Ring today to make colossal swords faster, I believe, so it's even better than it is when I started making this video. So yes, it is comparatively slow and heavy, but given it's a colossal weapon, it swings relatively quickly, and you always have the option of the crouch poke. But perhaps the most use I think you can get out of the weapon is the sheer power of a charged heavy attack. Most bosses will have a window allowing you to pull that off, even if it's quite tight. Most normal enemies in the game don't stand a chance against this weapon, because of the heavy stance damage it does, and the just high damage. You can quite simply steamroll just about any non-boss enemy with near enough to impunity as you can ever get in these games. As for bosses, even if you don't feel like learning all of their timing, you can always just summon a Spirit Ash to get the boss's attention whilst you walk up behind it, and begin heavy thrusting them into oblivion, doing not just high damage, but very high stance damage too. The weapon is pretty hard to obtain, in the sense that you need to have beaten Mo Gradan just to access the DLC, then once you're even in the DLC you need to find an enemy to farm it from. And the Fire Knights, they're not at the end of the DLC, but they aren't right at the beginning either. I haven't thought about the fastest way to get to them, but it wouldn't take you that long. If you just started the DLC, you can run up, go through Castle Ensis, clear that out, and then you can just run up into the Shadowkeep and you can start farming it in there without too much trouble, really. This might be one of those weapons you are able to drop for other players. I haven't tested that myself, and some items in the DLC can't be dropped, which is odd. There's an armor set, like the Divine Bird set or whatever, where parts of it can be given to other players, but other parts can't, which is odd. But if you wanted to use the Fire Knight Greatsword for your entire playthrough, you would need to rely on someone dropping it for you. Or maybe you drop it for someone, and then they can drop it for your other character you've just started the game with. I don't know, something like that. Would it be worth making a beeline for the DLC just to get this weapon? I don't think so, personally. if you wanted to substitute until that point, the Zweihander is easy to get, and you can get very powerful things on it, like the aforementioned Lion's Claw and Giant Hunt, easily and early in the game. Are there better weapon arts? No doubt there are, but those are my favourite ones. Simple, cool, and extremely effective. In a way, the FKGS is rather like the PGS from Dark Souls, the Painting Guardian Sword. Probably the most overpowered weapon in Dark Souls 1, if you ask me, but not easy to obtain until halfway through the game. So, in summary, the Fire Knight Greatsword, it just has good reach, decent speed, good scaling, just really high attack, and really good stagger potential. But what do you think? Do you agree that it's one of the most powerful weapons in the game? Again, Elden Ring gets patched fairly frequently. I mean, they patched it today, so we could well see it getting a nerf or a buff, for all I know. And even though it doesn't have innate bleed, which is something incredibly strong in Elden Ring, I think the sheer power of it makes up for that. Stagger power became slightly preferable over status ailments in the Shadow of the Erdtree for me, because the bosses just seemed more susceptible to the former. Either way, let me know down in the comments, and thank you so much for watching. See you soon.